There, we're about ready to start Two Old Bloggers. We've got a few things to talk about today. We're looking at draft, how the differences that Kwesi may do it versus Slick Rick. We'll find out, are they going to do the same? It sure looks like it's setting up that way, but is that a disappointment? Or are we going to be happy? We're going to look at some of those sneaky draft needs. Darren will explain what those sneaky needs are. And then at the end, we're going to pay tribute to a few fallen Vikings that we've missed over time, and we want to pay our respects. Until then, enjoy the roll-in, which I need to shorten, and we'll see you on the other side. Good morning, Stephen. Viking Jerome, welcome to the show. You on base, brother. You on base. Love is mutual, Steve. Love is mutual. Raymond, happy Saturday afternoon to you too, my friend. There's my drinking buddy, Joseph. Hey everybody, Dave here. Darren in the Great White North. How's things going up there, Darren?
Melton, spring has arrived.
Woohoo!
So I'm happy.
We've had our first taste of summer. A couple 90-degree days here down in Texas, which is okay. It's not bad. Everything's green down here. Pollen count is astronomical. It's affecting everybody's allergies, including mine, but hey, that's what happens when you live in the South. So, let's get this puppy going.
Indeed.
Back here to the graphics scene, and we'll hit it off. Going to be talking about the draft, right? We have less than 3 weeks now until the draft. So, and with the draft, the big 3-day event of Climbing the Pocket, wall-to-wall draft coverage. So, but first you wanted to talk about Kwesi and Rick.
A little bit of Kwesi and Rick, yes. Like you said, draft is quickly approaching, one of our favorite times of the year. And of course, with Rick Spielman having been a GM and with the Vikings and the player personnel department since 2006 until he got canned at the end of last season. We Vikings fans had I think we had a pretty good read on how he attacked the draft, especially the last few years. Very aggressive in the first round, trying to find trading down and adding draft capital, and also very aggressive on day 3 of the draft usually, and trading multiple times. Just and his whole thing, it seemed to be like add draft capital, get as many lottery picks as you can in the draft, and see where it goes. That
Well,
annoyed us at times.
There's the joke that he wants to own the 7th round. Yes.
Yeah. And in
Quantity
2020,
versus
he almost
quality.
did.
He almost did.
Yeah, and we had as Vikings fans, that got to be annoying at times, because you'd be like, you wait for a round, the Vikings are on the clock, then they're not on the clock because they traded with some team, and then they trade out of the 5th round to get 2 6-rounders, even though they already had 2 6-rounders, and it was all that sort of stuff. But again, very clear that Rick had a philosophy. He didn't really see their draft boards, obviously, especially on day 3. They didn't see a whole lot of difference between the players they could get in the 5th to the 6th, or the 6th versus the 7th. They just wanted more picks. That's how he did it. We have no idea, we've said this before, how Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is going to attack the draft. Is he going to be like Rick and look to accumulate draft capital, or is he going to be more with take the view of that
quality over quantity?
Yes,
approach.
Let's get more picks in the top 100 or 150 instead of trying to accumulate a lot in the back end of the draft. Don't know. Again, but with him being a analytics kind of focused guy, he will take that data into making some of those decisions. But I think the thing that we're discussing right now, a lot of focus on the first round of the draft and what the Vikings are going to do. And at this point, you're looking at the question that a lot of Vikings fans are asking is, are they going to stick at 12, or are they going to, particularly, I don't think a lot of people are seeing them trading up where this team is right now, although it could very well happen. But
depends who's available, say at like 10 or something.
On who's available.
Yeah, they could. Now, I saw a story, Vikings territory, I think today, talked about trading up to get in front of the Jets to get Sauce Gardner. What would it take to do that? And it would take our 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and I don't see that happening. So
I don't either, not where this team is at right now. But the trade down, which Rick Spielman did the last 2 drafts, that I think that's a discussion I'm seeing a lot right now, and I wanted to examine that a little bit because there's pros and cons to both, David. But at number 12 right now, I think that's a very good spot for the Vikings to be. Not as good as if you're maybe number 1 or number 2 or number 3, but I really feel that at number 12, with the Vikings' needs being what they are, you can feel pretty good at that spot that you're going to get, if you want, one of the top 3 corners in the draft at that spot. Probably one of the top 3 linebackers at that spot. One of the top 3 edge rushers at 12, I think. Looking at other teams' needs that are ahead of the Vikings, what they want, what they don't want. So I think it's a pretty good spot to be in, to get an impact, a player who's going to make an impact. And I feel that the Vikings, we'd like to see them get a player who has an impact like a Micah Parsons did last year with the Dallas Cowboys, or like Justin Jefferson had in 2020 with the Vikes. But so there's that. But the trading down is also, it's always appealing to me, David, because especially where the Vikings are at right now, they've got a lot of, they've got some key vets that they're probably going to be moving on from in the next year or 2. You know who they are: Harrison Smith, Adam Thielen, and when you're in that position, you really, Patrick Peterson just signed a 1-year deal. When you're in that position, really, and you're going to be moving on from these guys, trading down, getting more draft capital, and bringing in cheap young talent that you can either groom and bring in as depth is, I think, a pretty solid play for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah.
I prefer the
And
word grow versus groom, but okay.
mm, yeah, however you want to parse those words. But the Vikings have, again, a lot of a top heavy roster in a lot of ways. Guys that are expensive at the higher end, vets. Some
Uh-huh.
of them are going to be moving on, and if you really, if you can, again, if Kwesi can trade down, accumulate some draft capital, get maybe that fourth back that we traded from Chris Herndon, plus some extras as well. Set yourself up for this year and a little bit extra next year by trading down if you can do it. I like that. I think it's a good move. Now, the other side of the coin of it though is that at 12, it really, if there's a player you absolutely love at that spot
Take
that
him.
you feel is going to, yeah, take him. But if if the draft board falls in a way that you feel that you can move down 5 or 6 spots or 7 or 8 and still get a player that you feel is going to make an impact and that you like, then trade
Or
down.
that player may make it down that far. Yes.
That's right. Yeah. So trading down is very appealing to me because of what we just talked about. You could add draft capital, still getting a player you like, and and by accumulating more draft picks, you give yourself a bit more flexibility to later on in the draft trade to move up if you have to, or just get extra guys and get extra cheap depth. So that's why trading down, uh, I think, it really appeals to me. But again, you don't know how the draft is going to unfold at this point in time. And again, maybe 12 is you get that awesome player that maybe Sauce Gardner lands there at 12.
That
Right
would
now,
be a
it's looking like he
shock,
might.
but okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, it looks like he's going to go way earlier than that. And even Stingley, the other corner from
Mm-hmm.
LSU with the pro day he had, now his stock is starting to rise, where he was kind of an iffy, even picking at 12 for some people felt. So, really, it's going to be interesting. But I like the trade down scenario. I liked it last year when we did it. I liked it the year before when we did it. The results of that. How is Darisaw going to turn out? We don't know. We know that the Jeff
Well, we
Gladney
thought
thing
that
didn't
was
really
actually a
work out.
good move with
Yeah,
Darisaw, because that
yeah,
was
just
somebody you
because.
wanted that absolutely fell to where the spot you traded to. And if you could do
And yeah,
that,
you move.
you win. Period.
Yeah, moving down from 14th to 23rd and still getting the player you want. That's a win. And
Mm-hmm.
don't look at the process. I think was the right one. Sometimes the results don't turn out the way you like Jeff Gladney, but I don't think you're going to knock the process just because the result didn't turn out the way you wanted to. That's on the scouts and the GM, but they made the right choice in trading down. They just didn't make the right choice when they
Correct
with who they
process in
picked.
the trade, not correct process in the pre-draft evaluation. I see where you're going. Now, see, the question I have is Kwesi comes from an analytical background. We know that. He comes from a business, stock market, maximizing value. I like that idea of maximizing value. Now, you're going to measure, do, and we'll get into more of this next week on next week's show. The typical graph where you see, we'll start over on this side, where you see the graph go like this, like a ski slope down, right? Where you have the higher up, the better chance of having somebody make an impact, and the further you go down in the draft, the less likely they are. It's not that you can't find guys further down in the draft that can make impact. Um, Teams do it all the time. The Vikings have done it, right? Stephon Diggs is a prime example. He was selected in the fifth round, and he's turned into Mr. All-World wide receiver now for the Buffalo Bills. And but you got maximum value. You got more than expected, and we'll get into what's expected in each round from these players. You want to be able to find those guys. I think analytics can help find those guys, right? And whether it's Flip talking about a primo wide receiver, Maybe they go defense early and they find a primo wide receiver in the second or third. That's a hit. That's a huge hit, right? I'm curious how Kwesi's going to address it. And like I said, next Saturday, we'll get into some of the analytics of how the draft works out. Is he going to go with a more analytic approach and find those what would normally be gems, in the rough? And we don't know. We just flat out don't know. We know Spielman's approach. His was quantity. Hey, if I get, if I get 15 picks, I hope to hit at least on 5 of them, right? Type deal.
Yeah.
Or does he go the old school approach, which probably happens in Chicago, right? Where you got you want quality. I'm going to take the higher guys, knowing that they have a better chance of hitting. Don't know. I'm looking forward to it. It should be interesting to find out.
And we're going to be happy and upset all at the same time throughout the draft,
sure.
and be like, why did they do that? How come they did that? How come they didn't take that guy? Well, great pick, that sort of thing. We hope there'll be a lot more where consensus great pick than why did they take that guy. But yes, the whole thing on it'll be the one thing that one of the accusations made at Spielman with the whole accumulating a bunch of picks and the multiple trading, especially later in the round, although he didn't do it much last year. But that was, some people felt that he was admitting that he wasn't very confident in the picks that he was gonna make. So again, more lottery picks in the draft, but and not every organization took his approach, but you can see the logic behind it, how well it worked. Well, we see how the Vikings have done the past decade. It's they've been an okay team. They had a couple of really good years, but no Super Bowls, and we've got a new regime, and hopefully they've got the right formula to make it. And some of these picks at times you have to also, there's that you look at the data, you look at the profiles, you look at the scores that they've done at the combine, but of course there's a human element to it as well. And sometimes you just feel that the scout, the GM feels that this player is going to work in this situation just because, right? They've got maybe a bit of a gut feeling, or they just looked at the tape a little bit differently than some other scouts from some other teams do. It can't just all be driven by numbers, I don't think.
And you are 100% correct. And I heard the expression that it is, you can bring analytics. Those are tools added to the process, right, to help you make better decisions. And they may be the tiebreaker. If film, watching the film guys, they come to an, say, hey, this guy and this guy are equal, they may look at the analytics, how athletic is this guy? How does he do this? How does he does that? What's his on-field speed, etc.? And they may take the analytics to improve that and do as a tiebreaker. It's just fact we don't know at this point, and I like your analogy that it's a formula. I can see Kwesi in his lab coat with his chemistry set right there, mixing a little bit here, mixing a little bit there, the Bunsen burner going, and he's taking notes on how it's going to go. And we'll see how that turns out. Does he create the next, great thing in the league, or does he fail miserably and blow up the lab? We have no idea.
Dave, do you have a preference on, again, myself, I really like the idea of trading down. But I've said that. But do you have a strong opinion on what the Vikings should do?
It's like I used to tell Drew all the time. Depends how the board falls.
Yeah.
It's if you can get a surefire hit at 12, and 12's generally a good spot to get a surefire hit. And it's the guy you want, you grab him. No ifs, ands, or buts, you grab him. You don't waste it moving down and hoping you can get somebody that might, fit as well. If you know that player A, say say it's Sauce Gardner, not that he's going to make it that far, but say it's Sauce Gardner, and he falls to 12, you run to the podium and you grab him. You don't think twice. Not twice. Hamilton drops to 12. You run to the podium and drop that card. You don't think twice. There are players in this draft that we feel that would fit perfectly, short-term, long-term, whatever. You go get them. And then you work everything out after that. Now, what if they do trade down, which I'm not against. Trust me, I'm not against it. Especially knowing some of the needs and where they could go with it, right? Trade down and build up draft capital. And I would be really pleased if they do trade down and build up draft capital, if some of that draft capital is next year's, right? If they grab a first for 2023 draft, I'd be even more happy because we know going into 2023, thanks, Flip. Going into 2023, we need a quarterback, right? They're going to try to find some replacement for Kirk Cousins. And if you have 2 first-round draft choices, that makes it easier to move up in the draft and draft one of those, forecasted prodigy quarterbacks. Go ahead and do that. That would make me happy because this season, they're trying to be competitive. I know that. They think they can possibly win the division. That's possible, right? But they don't have the nucleus, short-term and long-term, I believe, to be a Super Bowl contender. Could they get lucky? Hell yes. And then at the end of next year, we're talking about run it all back, give everybody a statue, the whole works. Everything's rosy, stuff like that. But until then, the realistic approach is no. Vegas says 8.5, 9 wins, same as before, right? Let's build up to where Kwesi looks at this squad and goes, all right, we did it the way the Wolves did it. Now I want to change how I want to do it in 2023. Now I have the draft capital. If I want to go up and grab that top-of-the-line quarterback that I think is going to be the franchise guy for the next decade, I now have that in place, and I could do that. That I would appreciate it that way. But even if they went this year and traded down and got, moved down there first and got an additional second and third or second and fourth, however they figure out the point values, that's good too. It's just about to see. Now, Flip giving me grief about that's a boring answer. Flip, it's the smart answer. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't want to trade down and get 50 rookies that you're, betting on to hope to hit. The quantity over quality has not worked in the last few years, even though we'd like to see the team young across the board and have developing young guys. I don't think they're going to go that route 100% because they want to compete. The Wolves want them to compete. It's that simple.
Eric Johnson was asking, what did we feel about, or maybe he was asking everybody, what they feel about like trading up to get Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame. Thought I'd just give my 10 cents on that one, and I don't like that because of the position he plays. I understand, I know that he's considered a unique player at that position, potentially a generational talent at safety, but I just don't feel that what you'd have to give up to get him to move up would be worth it with what he would contribute as a safety for the Vikings, especially the way where this team is. I feel we really need to be adding draft capital, not giving it away to get a safety.
Right.
Now, even as good as Harrison Smith is, I would not have traded up.
I consider Hamilton. Aaron's talking about a blue chippers available. No matter position 12, you grab him. I agree with that. I consider Hamilton a blue chipper. If he's there at 12, and he won't be, but if he's there at 12, you grab him. And then you've solved the safety problem that we're going to get into. some of these guys are getting old. You had Harrison Smith on there. Harrison Smith is still a wonderful safety, but he has lost a bit of a step. We don't know how he's going to be used. So I have no issue with that. The big deal, it's unknown at this time. We don't know how they're going to go about it. And this is the first part, even though it's the old staff, this is the first part where Kwesi is 100% in charge of that draft room. If they're doing it by committee, I'll scream and yell and cuss and go ballistic because it'll take too long to make a decision in the draft room. Hopefully, Kwesi's there, got everything all prepped, ready to go, and decision charts, the whole works. And as soon as, it goes from pick 12, the Minnesota Vikings are on the clock, he'll have a game plan in place and just be waiting to take phone calls and go, you want to trade what? All right, I'll take your first next year, your second this year, and add in a sixth just for golly geez. Or make it a fourth. I prefer fourth. You want that? All right, come on up. Right? And that's the way I want to see how this draft goes.
But I thought I was told that like Kwesi isn't running the team. That some shadowy figures in elsewhere are doing it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well.
Thanks for joining us. Joining us, Jonas. I appreciate it. Now, you want to get into the second portion. Next topic. Who do we want to talk about first? You wanted to talk about the safeties. Speaking of safeties, let's go. Boom. Here we go. Here's our bunch of safeties.
Indeed, yes. Just looking at draft needs, Dave, and again, pretty obvious what the big needs are. Cornerback, I'd say linebacker to a degree, definitely the interior, center, right guard.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things, even though we signed Zadarius Smith and we've got Hunter back, you could make an argument that the edge rusher is still a position of need, especially when you don't know if Smith might be a 1-year rental and Hunter might be a 1-year guy too. But I think I feel one of the sneaky Vikings needs, something that I don't think they'd address in the first day, the first round, but is safety. Because looking at the players that we've got there, you've got right now, if the season started today, and yes, I know it doesn't, we're quite a ways along, but you've got Cameron Bynum be one of the starters, promising, but we really don't know what he is, what he'll be like as a full-time starter playing 17 games in the NFL. He started 2 games last year. He did very well, but again, small sample size.
Mm-hmm.
Harrison Smith, still a very good player, but he just turned 33. And he's probably not going to be a Viking in 2023, or at least that's how I look at it. But we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
He got a nice
and then you've
extension.
He did. Yes, he did. There is that. And then behind them, you got Josh Metellus and Miles Dorn. And that's it.
And do you know how hard it was for me to find a Miles Dorn picture of him in uniform?
I'm amazed that you got one.
It was that hard. Looking at USA Today, Getty, online, and there was only a handful.
And so that's why I feel that the Vikings, even though if you thought of the top 3 needs that they have going into the draft, safety wouldn't be it. I think that really it is a need because of the whole thing on the Bynum's a big, huge question mark, but you're really right now depending on him to be one of your starters. And Harrison Smith is 33. He's been very durable over the years, but you can see him at his age getting banged up and not being able to come back as quickly as he did when he was 23. And also how much longer is he going to be with the Vikings? In which case, I feel that the Vikings would be smart. You could see them target a safety, not in the first, probably not in the second, but I can definitely see it in the 3rd round. And if we get a 4th rounder back by trading down, uh, maybe there. Who are you gonna like? Who should we target? Well, we talked about Kyle Hamilton. I'm not big on trading up to get Kyle
Mm-hmm.
Hamilton. He won't be there at 12 or any other spot that you'd want to
Right.
pick, I think. So he's out of the way. Again, Hill from Michigan, probably not going to be there. You're not picking him at 12. I don't know if they'd be interested in the second round, but he probably Drew would know better than me, but he's probably a guy who probably could go in the second round. He's an excellent safety, but some a couple of guys that could be there in the third or a little bit later would be the other fellas there, Jalen Petrie from Baylor, and then you got Lewis Seen from Georgia. Petrie is a really intriguing prospect. He had a really good combine, ran really well, impressed a lot of people there, and he's a guy who was a do it all dude at Baylor. Tackles for losses, tackles, sacks, interceptions. He did everything well. So he's a guy that is going to be on every team's radar, and I think that the Vikings should be taking a hard look at him if he's in that third round area, if he's available in the third round. Don't know if he will be, but again, safeties, different teams have different views on how important they are. Lewis Seen, another guy who's he played for that all-world defense in Georgia, but really probably got overlooked because of the linebackers and the talent at linebacker and at defensive tackle and defensive end that they had there. Really got overlooked. But another guy that's good ball skills around the ball, very much a guy who could be in play in the third round, or he might slip a little bit later. There's other guys beyond that. Uh, and Drew did weigh in on Hill, so thank you, Drew. But again, really feel that safety not looked with our situation at safety. That's something that I think that the Vikings got to look at. They got to prepare for the future. They got to prepare for post Harrison Smith, or giving themselves more depth than Miles Dorn and Josh Metellus. So if either Smith gets hurt or Bynum gets hurt or Bynum doesn't work out the way we hope he does, then you've got a young guy who can move in there who gives you a plan B.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, if Bynum and Smith work out just fine, that's awesome. You've got your plan B for 2023 or maybe 2024, and that kid can develop and not and work on special teams, not have to get thrown in as a starter right away. But at least you're developing a young cheap talent to take over for potentially an aging vet like Smith. Or if Bynum doesn't work out, he goes. That young guy goes in for
Mm-hmm.
him, and then you got to find another safety to fill in for Smith whenever the
Right.
wheels fall off of his game.
And he's at that point. Anytime you get into the 30s, yes, players seem to be playing a little bit longer nowadays, but anytime you can hit that cliff and right, and it's gone, right? The guy was great, was serviceable last year, very good, and then just suddenly it's done. Flip had talked about he wants value positions, and he mentioned quarterback, cornerback. Um, I'm trying to remember wide receiver, and he failed to mention edge. But let's go with the top corners. Would you take that at 12? If Sauce is there, obviously you would. What about Stingley? Would you take Stingley if he dropped to 12?
I would. I'd do it quickly, and that's not just because of his pro day. He raised some concerns about speed and all of that, but I know he's had a bit of an up and down college career. Was phenomenal as a freshman. Last year, not dealt with the injury bug and all of that, but uh, if he hadn't had those injury issues and had a bit of a so-so year last year, he would have been the top corner rated. He'd be ahead of Sauce Gardner, and the talent's there, the ball skills are there, and he's played in the SEC, so he's playing against the top of the top talent. Whereas Sauce Gardner, we all know he gave up like 126 passing yards in total in last year, but he's playing against like Tulane and
Mm-hmm.
teams like that on a
Not that
regular
there's
basis.
anything wrong with Tulane. It's not the SEC level of competition.
Well, yeah, nothing wrong with Tulane, the school, but
I,
as far as the level of
it was one of the
competition,
few schools I got a scholarship to, believe it or not, way back when.
well,
They have
there
a
you
great
go.
architectural school, just to let you know.
Football team, not so much
Eh,
lately,
but
but well, Sauce Gardner wasn't playing Alabama regularly or those type of schools regularly. Stingley was, and I definitely would take him at 12 because he's got that kind of talent. I think that's completely a defensible pick at that position, considering the talent he's got, the physical skills he's got, and the Vikings need at cornerback at this position. He could be he's a guy who could be plug him in and play him from day one. Um, so I'm good with that. I'd even strongly consider a guy like Trent McDuffie at 12 if he's there. His college career has been pretty well. There's people on here have had some questions about whether he fits the scheme that the Vikings have done. I think there was a concern last week that he's not kind of the man to man. That's not his strength. And that's something that Ed Donatel had mentioned that he was looking for in his corner. So we don't even know how interested the Vikings are in a guy
right.
like McDuffie, but his track record's pretty good. I remember in 2015, we had a choice to make: Trey Waynes or Marcus Peters. Peters' measurables, he wasn't as fast as Trey Waynes, but throughout his career, he'd shown that he was a hell of a playmaker, a guy who got a lot of interceptions, made a lot of plays on the ball. And as we've seen, I mean, it's easy to be 2020 hindsight for me on this, but as we've seen, Peters' NFL career, he's been a more impactful player than Trey Waynes was. I'm not saying Trey Waynes was complete shit, but he was okay. But when
And
Peters has
Trey
been healthy,
Waynes is a good tackler. Trey Waynes is good against the run. Trey Waynes' problem is his neck is welded to his shoulders, and when the ball is coming, he doesn't turn around to look for it. That's Trey Waynes' issue. Um,
so yeah, that's a they're. But again, that McDuffie's had that. From what I've read, he's got that again. That very much of his college resume is as good as anybody's on there as far as his plays on the ball, what he's accomplished. Booth Booth from Clemson, another guy. I don't know why, but I feel 12 might be a bit early for him. But he's one of those guys where the trade down scenario could really work out well because if someone like
mhm.
Pittsburgh or somebody mentioned a little bit earlier, can't remember what team it was. It wasn't Pittsburgh, but one team that has two picks. New Orleans is another one
Right.
that if they see somebody they really like at 12, the Vikings can trade with them, move down, and then a little bit later in the 18, 19, 20 range, then a guy like Booth is a more defensible pick at that position than at 12, considering what scouts feel about him,
Right.
what the NFL draft profiles have been on him. But so,
And with the
but the
return of the trade plus the value of, say, Booth, you might get you know, a great pick. Now, if Malik Willis drops to 12, which I doubt, but if he drops to 12, and there's a lot of people, no way this guy makes it out of the top 10, right? And people are
yeah,
starting to do the math. Well, you're saying this guy won't make it, 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 this guy won't. And you've already, told me 18 guys that won't make it out of the top 10. And the math doesn't work out. Some of those guys are going to make it. If Malik Willis makes it to 12, I'd be on the phone with the Pittsburgh Steelers going, yeah, yeah, you're first this year, first next year. All right, yeah, let's keep talking, And that's the route if I was Kwesi, and I'm not, but if I was Kwesi, that's the route I'd go.
definitely with the quarterback position because that's such a the premium position in the NFL. Like again, if a team's looking to move up and you know that they're going to get a QB, you got to fleece them for all they're worth, because they're obviously looking to get a player to be the franchise quarterback and be a guy to get them to the Super Bowl and win it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you want to be getting the draft picks that equal to what that means to them. So they might be willing to give up quite a bit more to get the QB at 12 than somebody who wants to move up to get the offensive tackle that they want, or the linebacker that they want, or the cornerback that they want at 12.
Aaron, I rejoice in your belief. I hope it's the case. Speaking of the Longhorns, I look forward to seeing a game this year in person.
That'd be awesome.
Now,
down there.
You talked about linebackers. Do we take a linebacker at 12?
I don't see it. There was David, but although Devin Lloyd would be hard to pass up at 12, I think.
Okay.
But again, he's another guy that most mocks that I've seen is that he's going to go before we pick at 12. Nakobe Dean, awesome college production, but just the kind of his size, he's about 6 feet or so and
Right.
like 225 or something, like
small.
Pretty small for a linebacker. Will he be able to hold up at the NFL level, despite the fact that runs down ball carriers like
and
nobody's
he's got
business.
Heart and
yeah.
That's a good question. As Jonas said, please no. Second round, I still think unless you're getting somebody to replace Kendricks, I still might go a little bit further, but we'll see. Talked about defensive linemen. Now, in this, I use CBS as my who's the best. They have the kid from Minnesota as a DL. I would put him in the edge class. But would you take a defensive lineman, an interior guy, somebody that plays 0-3-5 technique?
I wouldn't. I know they're valuable, especially we've been moaning and groaning about the Vikings run defense the past 2 years, and it'd sure be nice to get a guy like a big wide body who can negate the run game. There's obviously value in that, but and I don't think Mafe is an interior guy at all.
I didn't understand why CBS had him there.
Yeah,
but
I know Jordan Davis. Class. Yeah, I know Jordan Davis ran like the 4.6 or whatever, and he's 560 pounds, and that's awesome and all of that. But I don't know, like I just wouldn't.
It's not quite 560. If he was 560 and ran a 4.6, I'd trade up for him because he's going to be. He's going to be a
360. He's 360.
Huge.
I do like these guys. Oftentimes are like 2-down players. I'm just not really keen on picking them at 12. Usually don't do much in the pass rush. They do occupy blockers and they allow other guys to make plays, and there's a lot of value in that. But again, I wouldn't pick an interior guy at 12 for the Vikings. And I think the Vikings have some pretty good options for the interior anyway. So
yep. What about edge?
That's not really.
We touched on it briefly. Would you take an edge?
I don't know whether I would at 12. Obviously, there's no way Hutchinson is going to be there at 12.
He's going probably number 1.
Yeah. Thibodeau, I've never seen him play, okay? I'll throw that right out there. But everything I'm reading about this guy screams bust. Just because, I'm hearing things I'm reading a lot about how uneven effort. And his production was not that great last year. If he was going to, and at one point he was potentially the number 1 pick in the draft, and now he's not, and lots of concerns about him. Last year he had well under like 10 sacks. If this is a dominating all-world player, I'd expect a lot better production from him than that. I'm not picking him at 12. I think that I just got a feeling about that guy that he's going to be one of those dudes that goes high and never lives up to that those expectations.
He very well could.
Johnson is a guy I would consider at 12. Dominated at the Senior Bowl, dominated at Florida State this year in his 1 year there, and did great at the combine as well. Big, tall kid, rangy kid. He's got lead, but he's got lead in his pants too. A guy with a high motor, high character guy. Could be an impact player from day one, and in an impact position, I would go at him. Karlaftis, the guy from Purdue, again, no questions about his motor or anything like that, but it seems like everybody is predicting him to go later in the first round. That's kind of where he should be going. I don't know if I feel that he's kind of one of those guys who could be a solid NFL player, but is not going to be like a star, huge impact player that you want to pick at 12.
Smith.
Yeah, not one of those guys.
That's the only problem I have with picking an edge in the first round is we've got Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith.
This year.
Obviously, it would be helpful in the next few years. But for this year, we have Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith, and I would move edge off my immediate need, as in first round bucket. Like Flip didn't even have them, even though they're the most impactful players, corners and edges on defense, quarterbacks and wide receivers on offense. I'd move them off.
And there's another shot, Dave, where, like, say, somebody really, really needs an edge, and Jermaine Johnson is still there, although that's not looking likely either at this point. But Johnson's still there. That's where, again, Kwesi can pounce. He's getting calls, fields calls, do the trade down, and again, get more draft capital, and you end up taking the cornerback that you like anyway, because, like, as you said, edges, it's a need, but not so much of a need in 2022 as it was a month ago when we didn't have Zadarius Smith and we didn't know if Hunter was coming back either.
Drew, I would love to get Mafe. I don't think he's going to make it to us in the second round, but if he does, I'd run up to the podium and drop the card.
It's looking like he's going to be a guy that
goes
into the edge of the first round. Mm-hmm. First round, yeah, with all he's done in the past 2 months.
Well, that rounds out what we think about the number 12 pick and whether we trade down. We both agree most likely we're not trading up, so stay
where we're at or trade down.
And it depends on the board falls. Who's there?
Yeah, like if there's a stud there you absolutely love, you stay there. If you're kind of like, well, we can get who we want and move down a little bit later,
then
you trade down.
To move down. Mm-hmm. So that brings us, before we hit our last segment, of course, we got to hit Lake Monster Brewery. Matt Lang, the brewmeister, still waiting on that second care package from him because you know me, I love beer. And I went through that first one way too quick. But they make some fabulous beers, all different flavors and styles, from subtle to wild, right? Discover the ones you like. They're in downtown St. Paul, close to Egan. It's an easy commute. Get over there, try them, have some good food as well, and make sure you join us on day 2 of our 3-day draft coverage, where we are going to be 100% live. And on day 2, we're live from the brewery, and there's tons of free giveaways, right? And those free giveaways include beer, right? Man after my own heart, I wish it could be there. And but not only beer, other stuff, and you're guaranteed a great time, because I'm sure Kwesi and the boys are going to do a fantastic job once it comes day 2, because we'll have had our first round. We'll know what we did there. They'll reset the board, and we'll get to move on. We got draft choices in both the second and third round, and we'll see where we go from there. Now, to round out the show, you wanted to hit some guys that have passed away in the last bit that we have not touched upon on this show.
We don't, yes, Dave, we don't tend to focus much on the Vikings' past legends and the Vikings, the history of the team, all that much. 'Cause we're so focused on
Right
what's
now.
happening now with the Vikings, right? And like, let's get us out of this rut we're in and get rid of the Temple of Gloom. But this week we learned that
We still have one
Doug
pillar.
Southern. We do. And yeah, that's right. The temple has not been completely knocked to the ground yet. But this week we learned that Doug Sutherland, a longtime defensive tackle for the Vikings, a member of the Purple People Eaters, passed away, and I wanted to recognize him and again a couple of the other legends that we're referencing because. Again, I don't have any memories of Doug Sutherland as a player. He was a little bit before when I got to watch a lot of Vikings games. Really, in where I was from in Canada, we didn't get cable TV until the mid '80s,
Right.
and that was the only time when we were able to watch NFL games every Sunday, and then Sunday night and Monday too. Before that. If we got any Canadian listeners, they might remember this. But before those days, at least where I was from, we'd only get NFL games when the CFL season was over, which meant that was basically like the last 4 games of the NFL regular season and then the playoffs. So in the 70s when I was young, I was still watching a bit of football, but didn't. Anyway, I never really saw Sutherland play, and I don't think I would remember if I did. But here was a guy, again, part of the Purple People Eaters. He replaced Gary Larson on the inside. I think he started 90 games, I believe. Was with the team for 10 years. Was made the Pro Bowl, and for him to get able to be a consistent starter in the interior, but he got overlooked because when you're next to Jim Marshall, Carl Eller, and Alan Page, you're going to get overlooked.
Yeah.
You're going to get overlooked. But there's been still, for him to be on the starter with that group, he had to be a hell of a player. And here's a guy that there's been several thousand players who've wore a Vikings uniform in their franchise history. Some of them for like one game, some of them for multiple seasons, like Sutherland. Sutherland was considered one of the top 50 Vikings of all time. So again, had to be a hell of a player, even if I don't have any memories of him. I don't know if you have any memories of him, David. But
I have memory of the Vikings of that time, especially sacking Hart here from the St. Louis from the St. Louis Cardinals, but none specifically of him. Now we'll get to Mick Tingelhoff here in a bit, and yes, there. Our next player who died last year, passed away on us, was Steve Riley, tackle, right? And these are guys I watched when I was playing Pop Warner football, and I was playing tackle, how to hit and how to grab. And Steve was the epitome of it back in the day on those Super Bowl era teams where he would stand up. You see his right arm like this. He's delivering what we used to do in the day. It was called a forearm shiver. You'd stand up that defensive guy and you'd smack him with your forearm. It's to stun him, get him off balance. Steve was great at that. And it's sad when these old guys go away. It's the passage of time. You wish they would have seen the Vikings eventually win a Super Bowl. They wish they would have won a Super Bowl. You wish they would have, and they would have wished they saw the team win one before they died. And it's just another in a long list that have not.
Yeah, and
But
Steve had passed away in September of 2021, and then he just passed away a few days after. Unfortunately, Mick Tingelhoff, the long time awesome center for the Minnesota Vikings. Mick had passed away in September 2021 too, and another guy I don't have any memories of watching, but
he was good.
Tingelhoff, yeah, Tingelhoff. Steve Riley played left tackle opposite Ron Yari at right tackle
Mm-hmm.
on some of those great Viking lines with Tingelhoff at center, and then you had Ed White at guard, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, and
The
and then of
great
course
Ed
Doug
White.
Sutherland playing with, yeah, the great Ed White.
And
Ed's
thankfully, he's still with us. Yeah.
still with us, yeah. Doug Sutherland playing on the interior, the Purple People Eaters, but these legends, these guys, these three guys, they're part of the huge history of this team. They were part of teams that really the glory days of the Minnesota Vikings, when they won a division. They won the division every year. They made the playoffs every year and made the Super Bowl 4 times in an 8
Mm-hmm.
season span in the late 60s, early 70s, and they are responsible for creating the lore and the history of the franchise that people like me learned about
Right.
and ended up loving the team and still do. So a huge debt to these guys, these fallen guys that have passed away, these Viking legends that gave people that are a little bit older than me, gave them so much joy and were such great players and on such great teams. And it's just sad to lose them, like you were saying. And hopefully, some of the guys like Jim Marshall's 84, Carl Eller's 80. I
Well,
think Fran
Joseph
Tarkenton
says
is, yeah,
Bud's up there.
Bud
He's
is,
in his 90s.
he's in his 90s. Fran Tarkenton is, I think, 81 or 82.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping, you're hoping that they're around a lot longer, and so that we
Hopefully,
can enjoy
they
that.
can enjoy holding a Lombardi themselves. Because if the Vikings ever win one, I hope they pass it around and let these guys that were the foundation of what built, the fandom and built the lore of that became the team, the excellence, you know, setting the standard at excellence all the time. It was these gentlemen, these fine gentlemen. And hopefully the guys that are still around will be able to touch and hold, hopefully, a future Vikings Lombardi. And we'll see, but I hope they do. But the great Mick Tingelhoff, Hall of Famer, by far one of the greatest centers that has ever played. I wish all three of them that they rest in peace, that they're, in Valhalla, waiting for that day when they get called back to do battle once again.
That's true, Dave. And when the legends that are still with us, one of the reasons selfishly that I want them to stick around is that when they're still alive, it just those glory days of when the Purple People Eaters, the Vikings, the glory days of the Vikings in the 70s, that just feels a little bit. It doesn't feel so far away to me if they're still with us. Those legends are still with us. As more of them pass, it feels like it's like the glory days when of the Vikings are just get farther and farther away from us, and I don't want that to happen as a fan. And
Right.
hopefully, like Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell, they start a new set of glory days for the Vikings, like what happened when Holmgren. I hate to mention it, but when Holmgren and number 4 came together, right, and revived
I'd
that
rather
franchise,
mention
which
I'd rather
continues.
mention the Patriots, right? Because I
Yeah,
was in high school in New England when the Patriots got halfway decent, right? And eventually they made the Super Bowl when I was over in England, and they lost to the Bears. But and then
badly.
they got, eventually they found their quarterback, and then went on a dynasty run. So
Yeah.
I would love dynasty. I would love to get out that to be that considered. He's just an arrogant Vikings fan. All they do is
Yes.
win
Yeah.
Super Bowls. Oh yes, please. Let me be that guy.
Yeah, bring it on. Yeah. You won't hear the end of it if the Vikings get to be that sort of team. I'll be like crowing about it 24/7. So,
but hey, it's been a good show, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yes, it is. Yeah, just wanted to shout out the legends.
Mm-hmm. And they were. Like I said, next week we will get into, and we talked about it this week, we'll get more into the analytics of what sort of expectations people should have. And then we'll wager, we'll evaluate Kwesi and how he does things against those and see how they do. But it's, like I said, it's the typical ski slope. But we'll look at it in depth and see how that goes. I'll dig in, I'll build out some spreadsheets, and who knows? Maybe we'll see something enlightening.
Ooh.
Any last words?
I'm sorry, everybody, I didn't get to talk about the huge Julian Taylor signing. Maybe next week.
Yeah, that's about how much priority we gave it.
Yeah.
I do want to thank everybody for watching.
Absolutely.
You guys mean the world to us. We appreciate it, guys and gals. And as always, drink good beer. Stay healthy, stay safe. Eat good food. Enjoy your friends. And what do we say, Darren?
We say, Skol Vikings! Woo!
Skol Vikings! Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite aggregator. And a special shout out goes to our partners, The Daily Norseman, where the best Vikings content can be found, and to Lake Monster Brewing, home of the best beer in Minnesota. Skol, everybody.